brought copies of
I did read my books with me. This is probably the bestseller. It's called The Boss's Son, and it tells the story of a guy that picks up a twink and crying and finds out the next day that he's the son of his boss.
Oh,
And this one, when I wrote it, I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. As a matter of fact, it was 2 years later. This is called First Impressions Don't Count. And the two men in it travel up and down the coast of California. And every time they run into someone who is against them, who's homophobic, there's a straight ally standing there backing them up. And like I said, I didn't realize I'd done that until 2 years after I published it. So it's, and book number 7 is kind of a sequel to this, in that in this book there are 4 cousins, and book number 7 is going to be theirs. The one I'm working on right now is very sad. It's about a couple who've been together for 50 years, over 50 years. And the changes they saw, because it's set in 2053, 40 years from now. And I'm hoping there are a lot of changes before then. And it starts out when one of the partners has a massive stroke and is declared dead. And the other partner goes home and starts looking at pictures of their life together. And it tells all their working against Prop A, when DOMA goes down, and they raised 4 children, and it's kind of happy and sad. Yes. So, and that's me.
Thank you. I'm going to stand up because I'm an old school teacher and that's what you do when you're talking. I'm Christopher Leitch and I'm one of the founders of GLAMA, the Gay and Lesbian Archive of Mid-America. And GLAMA is a partnership of the Kansas City Museum, which is the city's history museum, a publicly funded institution devoted to collecting the history of Kansas City, and the University of Missouri Kansas City Special Collections in the University Library. It's no mistake that those 2 institutions are partners in founding GLAMA, because my life partner, husband is shorthand for that, Stuart and I, we've been together 23 years this year, found ourselves in positions of influence and authority at local history institutions, and we realized no one in this region was collecting this history. And we knew, because we had lived a good part of it, that there was a lot of LGBT history here, and that the reason people think that there were no gay people in the past, and it's a recent invention, is that that history wasn't collected, preserved, or interpreted, published, or stories told by the people who were in charge of society. Stuart tells very interesting stories about working at the library downtown, where they used to have what they call vertical files of clippings. Before the age of the internet, there was an age before the internet. If you wanted to have ready references for stories from the newspaper or other information, you would cut them out of the newspaper and magazines and take them on pieces of paper and put them in a file folder, and you could have access to that whenever you needed it. And at the library, the studious professional librarians who worked there, mostly ladies, would cut stories about the fine arts and the symphony and doings around town. What you didn't find in that collection were stories about people of color, or criminals necessarily, or unsavory elements of society. There was an editing process going on at the clippings table, and that process edited out all kinds of people from the community's history at that one institution. So we know something about untold stories, and we determined to try to do something about it. And in 2009, we founded GLAMA with our community advisor partners Ross Freese from the University of Missouri and David Jackson from the Jackson County Historical Society. The first gift that the museum received, which sort of encouraged us to move forward with this, and I think a couple of you have a copy of the AIDS Walk t-shirt collection book. Mike Sugnet had collected all those t-shirts from AIDS Walk and gave them to the museum because we have a big collection of historic textiles and clothing at the museum. And we thought, okay, now's a good time to begin collecting our community's history. And we knew it wouldn't cost any extra money because our institutions are already in the business of collecting things and preserving them and storing them. So we didn't have to do a lot of fundraising. We already had funding streams to do that. And we had professional staff, both of us, already preserving collections and wrapping them up and writing about them and collecting information about them and researching them and publishing about them. So we thought we had a good chance of success. Little did we know that people were champing at the bit. That's an old-fashioned expression for waiting in the wings. That's an old-fashioned expression for people were really ready to contribute to this collection. What we often find in communities, marginalized communities, like communities of color, the LGBT community, where there's no majority institution collecting that history, is a phenomenon we call shoebox history. People believe their history is important, but there's not this well-understood path to the historical society or the local museum, so you just keep it at home, and in your social circle or in your church or in your community center, you bring it out and you look at it, and then it goes back in the shoebox. We're getting a lot of shoebox collections donated to LAMA from all different sources. I don't think that the AIDS Walk t-shirt collection is a shoebox collection because Mike Sugnet collected those things, took them to the AIDS Walk, paraded them, showed them, but the scrapbooks from the Metropolitan Community Church were kind of a shoebox collection that were assembled by Phyllis Schaefer, Drew Schaefer's mother, right?
Right.
Mother, right. We had a great shoebox collection from the Kansas City Co-ed Sports Association, co-ed meaning boys and girls, and often in the LGBT community, the boys and the girls don't play well together, but in the co-ed Sports Association, there was bowling, softball, and a number of other sports activities that boys and girls did together. Very interestingly, Stuart's in contact with one of the founders of Womantown in Kansas City, which was a women-only community that was being established in Midtown, Kansas City, back in the 80s and 90s. And those founding documents are going to make their way to the Glamour collection. As more people learn about the collection, they bring their materials to us. One thing that we find very often is people go, oh, there's your museum or university library, my things aren't shiny or pretty. Why would you want old t-shirts or just a box of papers from the Lavender Umbrella, which was a lesbian sort of community center over on 43rd Street back in the 80s. And we let people know that the way history is built is out of scrapbooks and photo collections and papers. If your organization and is a 501c3 and has meetings and has minutes and has a list of officers, and you have a collection of all those meetings and minutes, we want those materials because bit by bit, piece by piece, we build a mosaic image of the life of the community over time. We're trained to organize your old boxes of crap. So if you just have a box of stuff in your basement and you think, oh, I'm so embarrassed and it's not organized in any way, please just bring it to us anyhow, because it's our profession to sort through that, organize it, and make it accessible to other people. And we love doing that. That's why we made it our professions and our livelihoods. And if it's necessary, we'll clean it up, and if necessary, we'll get it ready to exhibit. We do produce scholarship in the form of, for example, this museum program called Community Curator, which invites people to come look at the collection and then write things about it. Stuart Hinds wrote this great piece about the history of female impersonation in Kansas City. His research shows that that history is at least 130 years old or more, and he keeps finding new information information about that. It's really amazing. He will happily talk to you all day about that if you like. Steve Metzler, who was chair of the board of the AIDS Service Foundation for a long time, talked to us about the AIDS Service Foundation because GLAMA is the repository for the papers of the ASF. And it's just that, papers. But it tells the story of a grassroots community movement to provide health care for people with AIDS. When hospitals were turning people away, doctors wouldn't see patients who were suffering with HIV. And back in the mid-'80s, nobody knew what to do because it wasn't until 1986 that the American Medical Association officially recognized the research that indicated HIV causes AIDS and AIDS-related complex, as we know it then. All these bits and pieces help build a complete picture of our community's history, and we're still learning new things. Who knew there were a group of people interested in Japanese anime same-sex relationships? We did not know that. And when you're our age, there are a lot of things you don't know about what young people are doing, and you're really interested in learning more about those things and welcoming this facet of the community into the fold, as it were. One of the things that this reminds us of, and Stuart will talk more about the history of the LGBT community in Kansas City, is I'm 53 and Stuart's over 50, doesn't mind my saying that. I dare say you're over 30, as are you. And Kurt is maybe over 30 as well.
I'm almost 71, so that's...
Yay! Seniors. Our gay communities, our lesbian communities are really different from the LGBT communities of younger people 25 and under today. We grew up with people yelling at us out of cars and throwing rocks and eggs at us and firing us from our jobs and kicking us out of our apartments. People are still being thrown out of their homes and being beheaded and burned alive for being gay, so we don't think that the world has changed that much. But socially, it's a really different city. Kansas City is now than it was 30 years ago when we were in college and figuring out what we were doing with our lives. That's one of the reasons we want to preserve the history of what it was, but we also are really interested in the history that's becoming, because this, tomorrow morning, is going to be history. And we need to keep track of what the community is doing and what it's interested in. This is not the first international subject of interest to LGBT people here in Kansas City, but it's kind of a new one, and we're really pleased to be here and to be a small part of it. We have Katie to thank for that, who has the broad thinking to welcome people here to share their ideas and their projects. One thing we're really short on at GLAMA is women's history. We have some Lavender Umbrella, we have Womentown stuff, and we have some of the Co-ed Sports Association, but it's a real man-heavy kind of project. And if you know lesbians or bisexual women who have historical material, photographs of their social lives, etc., we'd love to see it at the collection. And you can find out how to contact us right here on the back of our analog contact system. Just call Stuart at the library, or you can go to glama.us and contact him there. Stuart is going to talk to you about the research he's currently doing on the history of LGBT Kansas City, which complements David Jackson's great publication, Changing Times, which is the first comprehensive published history of LGBT in Kansas City. He published that 2 years ago? 2 years, 3 years ago. Yeah. And he's really cute, so you should just ask him. Thank you.
Thank you all for having us here today. As Christopher said, we didn't know such an organization existed, and we really are trying to capture all the facets, the many facets of the LGBT communities in Kansas City. And this is a particularly fascinating one, and we're really excited to learn about it and to be involved, so thank you. Very briefly, I don't want to go through the entire history of the LGBT communities in Kansas City. I just want to point out some factoids that we have learned as we have picked up collections. For example, did you know that female impersonation in Kansas City can be documented back to 1859? There's a law on the books in Kansas City that said it is a misdemeanor for anyone to appear in public in clothing inappropriate for his or her gender, for his or her sex, it said. So apparently in 1859, cross-dressing in both directions is enough of a problem that they have to pass a law against it.
They thought it was a problem.
And I'll probably talk mostly about drag because that's where I've been doing my research. We have evidence, we have lots of newspaper advertisements that list regularly female impersonators performing at clubs during Kansas City's golden age of jazz during the 1930s in the 18th and Vine district. Lots and lots and lots of ads. Wednesday night at a particular club was female impersonation night. There was a club that was specifically known for female impersonators. It was at 1401 Independence Avenue, Club Dante's Inferno.
They would react like that to those performers.
So those are really the early indicators of the presence of what we might consider a gay community in the city's history. We don't see a much more public presence until the mid-1960s, when Drew Schaefer founds the Phoenix Society for Individual Freedom, which he does in 1966, pre-Stonewall. Stonewall was 1969. Drew Schaefer founds the Phoenix Society in 1966, which is a gay rights group, a visible gay rights group. They have their own community center on the southwest corner of Linwood and Paseo. They publish their own newsletter that's distributed nationally. He participates in national conferences of organizations like that are in other cities. The first such conference was held in Kansas City at the State Hotel at 12th and Wyandotte in 1966. So Kansas City has a really rich history that, again, predates Stonewall. After Stonewall, when people become eager to be out and to be visible, we see the development of other community organizations. There's the Women's Liberation Union, there's the Gay People's Union, Gay Community Services. Throughout the 70s, you see much more activity going on politically and advocacy-wise, as well as socially. That's when you see a lot of bars open up for both men and women, a lot of opportunities to socialize. In the 80s, when the AIDS crisis hits, the community turns inward to fight the issue because there's no help forthcoming from the government initially. And the success that they see in organizations like Good Samaritan Project and Save Home translates later on in the decade, in the 90s, into trying to do the same thing with political groups. So you see Pink Triangle Political Coalition, Human Rights Project, ACT UP, and the Condom Crusaders being developed to work on the political realm and educational realm, so that you get things like the city ordinance that passed in 1993 that prohibits discrimination, and ultimately you get things like DOMA and things on a much broader scale. So who knew all this stuff was going on in Kansas City? I mean, it's been there all along. It's just been a matter of gathering the documentation and studying it. And we're not the only ones who study it. We've had lots of students from the school come in and do research. I've worked with high school students. I worked with a student out in Independence. I think she was a junior high student who did a History Day presentation. And we were able to help her with materials from the collection. So not only do we collect it and preserve it, but we make it accessible to the community at large. It's not just UMKC students. It's not just museum visitors. It's everyone. And you can just come, give me a heads up. We're open 9 to 4:30 Monday through Friday. You can come and you can look at material. You can incorporate it into whatever research you're doing. In addition, we've got some things coming down the pike pretty quickly that might be of interest. February 18th, it's a Tuesday night at the Plaza Library. I'm sitting on a panel that talks about the development of gay rights organizations in Kansas City. Drew Schaefer's organization, stuff going on in the 70s, and we'll have a woman who actually was involved in the Pink Triangle Political Coalition talk about her work. Kay Madden, she's a lawyer. Earlier than that, the weekend of February 7th, 8th, and 9th is, let me take a deep breath, the Midwest Conference, the Midwest Bisexual, Lesbian, Gay, Transgender Ally College Conference. It's a big Midwest college student conference down at Bartle Hall and the Marriott downtown. We're expecting about 2,500 students, 2,500 attendees. It's a big conference. If you're interested, just look up MumbleTack online and you'll find more information. And then March 8th at UMKC in the Student Union, we're doing a community forum called A Community of Families. It's to highlight the work of faculty and students in women and gender studies as it relates to LGBT families. It's from 10 to 3. We're bringing in a speaker who focuses on urban planning for LGBT folks. And there's some breakout sessions in the afternoon, and there's lunch. And because there's lunch, there's a $10 registration fee. So if you're interested, look that up online as well, or just catch me afterwards and I'll give you more information. So again, thank you for this opportunity. We're really, really excited to participate and to learn more about OnCon.
I'm Lora Ceperly, and I'm on the board of Like Me Lighthouse here in Kansas City. We're Kansas City's only LGBT community center. We were founded in we opened in 2012. Let me take you back for a moment. Shelley Wright was a country music artist in Nashville, and she's from the Kansas City area. And in 2010, she came out as the first openly gay country music star. She wasn't sure what that would do to her career. As we know, it kind of ended in country music as a result of that. But more importantly to Shelley, she wanted to use her voice to bring the community to the forefront and help in making the world a better place for LGBT individuals. So after she came out, she formed her organization called the Like Me Foundation. And Like Me is all about focusing on learning how we're similar as opposed to worrying about how we're different. So in forming her organization, she decided she wanted to create a community center. Coming from Wellsville, Kansas, she realized that the Midwest it wasn't such a barren place for the community, but for youth, it was kind of hidden, and it was really hard to grow up in the Midwest as a gay youth. So she wanted to bring a community center to her organization, and she felt like Kansas City was the perfect place to do that. So in late 2010, she announced that the Like Me Lighthouse was going to come to Kansas City. We spent all of 2011 and the first part of 2012 renovating a space on 3909 Main, and we opened on March 10th, 2012. We're coming up on our second anniversary, which is like really huge. Our mission is to be a resource for educational and resource center for LGBT individuals and their families. And we're all about respect and inclusion for everyone. And that's, one of the things that we were talking about in the lobby is, this community in particular, you can come here and you can be yourself, and that's what the Like Me Lighthouse is all about. So we have, I'm so sorry Melinda Ryder isn't here. She speaks about this much better than I do. We have meeting facilities. We have a lending library that has over 2,000 items of books and DVDs. We have social programs and educational sessions for a wealth of topics. We've talked about estate planning for older individuals. We've partnered with SAGE, the older adult LGBT task force. Probably screwed that around.
Close.
Okay. Anyway.
We did some immigration stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, we've tackled some legal issues, and we're going to continue to do those things because, as the need comes forward, we want to make sure that we're providing those resources. Some of the things on the table here we do have at the Lighthouse. We have a lot of, we have a full directory of LGBT resources. A youth comes in that's troubled and they need to talk to somebody, we have counselors to refer them to. If somebody's in real crisis, we also have a room at the side of the lobby called the Trevor Room. And that room, you can dial a 1-800 toll-free number to the Trevor Project, which is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. It's amazing how, in just 2 years' time, we've really grown. We have more and more people coming. We're partnering with more and more organizations. We've partnered with Passages, Kansas City Anti-Violence Project, HRC, MCC, GLAMA. It's a great thing to see that everybody's coming together in the community. And most importantly, anybody can walk in the door and you're in a safe place. It's really been great. We've had several youth come in who have just felt completely lost because they were kicked out of their homes. And we were able to refer them to resources where they can help get on their feet. And mostly they come and hang out and just be who they are, and they found a family outside of what their blood family was. So it's just a really great organization. We are a 501c3 not-for-profit. We run on a totally volunteer task force. And so if you're ever interested in helping either man the front desk or help with some of our activities, all you have to do is go to the center and say, hey, I want to volunteer, and we'll put you to work. So I think that's all I have at the moment for the Lighthouse.
Hello, my name is Alexander Edelman. I am here primarily as the president of EQUAL, which stands for Empowering Queer Activists and Leaders. We are a for youth by youth, I have cards, for youth by youth LGBT organization that promotes activism and sort of empowerment for young people, both in the LGBT community and not, to fight basically all forms of oppression. So we don't just deal with LGBT issues, we deal with issues around racial justice, around class, around gender, and things like that. So, it's a broad organization. Every year we have what's called our Phoenix Leadership Team, which is actually named after the Phoenix Society, and that is a group of young people who really leads the organization. They plan our direct actions. They plan our annual Equal Empowerment Summit, which is a day-long event that has different sessions for to teach different topics about activism and being safe in your school, starting in GSA. We do it. Planned Parenthood comes in and gives a comprehensive sex ed talk. So it's a big event that we do every year, and again, it's totally planned by our youth. And they so what we do is we have a new class every year. It starts in the summer, and we do trainings for them and sort of give them the tools they need to really lead the organization. Trying to think what else. We're looking at starting a chapter at UMKC. You can find us online, equalcenter.org, Facebook page, things like that. I think that's all the social media we're on right now. I also probably should mention I'm loosely associated with Casey Legal, which is the Kansas City's LGBT lawyers group. They're also, they do things around the legal side aspect of stuff. And that's another organization you can look up and contact if you have any issues. We're tied into all these. I think all organizations kind of really connected to one another and, know how to refer back and forth. And, I think are really looking just to help out anyone who needs it. So certainly never hesitate to contact any of the organizations, including a lot that aren't represented today. I don't know if we just want to try to run off some important ones.
We will.
Okay, you're going to do that later? I won't mention it then. I think that's it. Well, I'm, of course, happy to answer questions if that is part of the program.
It will be.
This is your list.
Yep, that's the list. Yeah, go ahead and give it to you.
Speaking, Kate has developed a really great comprehensive list of current LGBT?
They're both very similar. Just give one type. You don't have to give two of them.
Okay.
Just one.
So these are local resources that you can turn to, and as Alex said, if you call one of us, if we don't do it, we know who does. And we can try to connect you with whoever can give you legal advice, or is planning a softball game, or is sponsoring the Pride breakfast for LGBT students at UNJC, or chanting.
You know, one of the things I forgot to mention, on the Lakeview Lighthouse website, we have a calendar of on our own, not only our own events, but other events that are going on in the community. We try to put as many of them on there as we're aware of, so that's another source you can go to.
And another great source of information is the, what is it? Mid-America Gay Lesbian Chamber of Commerce in Kansas City. They have a great calendar online, more business-related stuff, but they are also a friend to the nonprofit organizations and will promote us however they can. So we don't know if you have any questions.
Okay.
Or
So any questions for any of them? Okay.
Wow, we told them everything we know.
So, okay, speaking as an ally, what you said about volunteering at the lighthouse, I noticed that we just recently moved here into the area
Oh, great.
from the south.
Oh, wow, great.
welcome.
How far south, may I ask?
Yeah, what?
How far south, may I ask?
Georgia?
Wow, that's south, yeah.
Yeah, that's south. So, I would love to be able to volunteer, I just don't know what areas do you need? I guess everything, right? That was
Well,
kind of
pretty much, you know, we have, we put on different events throughout the year. Like I said, we partner with other organizations with their events. We have information booths usually at some of these at various festivals. We have front desk that we man on a volunteer basis every day. We're open 7 days a week. Our hours are changing to the winter hours, so we're going to be open just from like 3 to 6 Monday through Friday, and then after that, if there's an event for that evening. But we're always looking for people who can help man the desk, help with events, help direct people, just anything. If you have a particular talent, like if you're an event planner,
I was a theater teacher for 13 years.
Okay, perfect.
So, okay.
Okay. So
Now that you have
anything
that-
you want to bring your talent to,
Okay.
we'll find a place for it.
And since you have that list, none of those organizations is going to turn away someone who calls up and says, I'd like to volunteer. And we're going to reach through the phone and never let go.
Yeah.
Because all of these organizations have a list of duties that volunteers can help out with. And there is an organization in town, I don't know if it's Nonprofit Connect, but there is an organization that hooks up volunteers with other not-for-profit organizations, and it might be
There's
nonprofit.
volunteer match.
Volunteer Match, that's it. And you can go there and say what you're interested in doing and what your skill set is, and you'll get a list of options and opportunities, and many of them are represented in this table.
Thank you.
But we'll talk after.
Yeah, got it.
Since you are an ally, I do want to mention, we also have, I know PFLAG didn't have a speaker here, but we have PFLAG information.
There's some information about being an ally somewhere else.
Yes, I saw that, I was going to grab
Ah,
it.
there we go.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of PFLAG stuff right here.
Yeah, so PFLAG has
Yeah.
2 meetings. Actually, they have a meeting in their traditional space in Prairie Village. And then they've also started a monthly meeting at the Lighthouse as well on the Missouri side.
Okay, so I'm going to, what were you going to say?
Oh, come on, Jen. Come on in, John.
In here, John Long!
You're probably
One of
interested in
us.
that.
He probably wants to go watch watch them eat suggestions.
Suggested eating.
There he is.
I'm sorry I didn't contact you.
That's fine.
That's the organizer of our event. This is
Yeah,
Joe
he
Robb,
can
who's the
definitely-
publisher,
you
senior
can be a
editor
speaker.
at Hoobah Camp,
It's our LGBT magazine.
in full color and.
Hand it out to
covers everything
everyone.
and Is an official record of.
Or you can just
life
put
in
it on the
LGBT
table.
community.
Okay, I'll put some on, thank you.
Or you want to say a
Or
little
I
bit
guess-
about you and your
Here.
magazine? And
Sure, Doug. You a couple minutes?
Yeah, we have plenty of time.
we had some people not be able to make it, so.
Well, I just found out about this today, and I'm sorry, I'm getting
That's
late.
my fault. I
Don't worry,
apologize.
no worry at all. I went up to the third floor, it looks like you're having a great conference. There's a lot going on. We started at Gay Pride in June 2004, so this is our 10th year anniversary. And we've outlasted every LGBT magazine in Kansas City. They typically have a track record of going under in a few years, and I think one of the reasons why is that a lot of people do the LGBT magazines out of love for the community or you know what they're covering, but they really don't know publishing, and they don't know the economics of publishing, and there's a big difference in doing something you love and something you really know how to do. And my whole background has been in publishing my whole life, so it was kind of natural that being gay and also knowing publishing that I kind of got into this. And we started it with my partner who was a graphic designer, and so I have the publishing background to get the design, so we got the magazine going. And so with the help of the community, it's all happened. I mean, when we first started, Jim, my partner, said, who's going to write for us? You know, and I was kind of like Field of Dreams. You know, if we build it, they'll come. And that's exactly what happened. We got a lot of volunteers. There was another magazine in town years ago called Midwest Times, and they had gone under. So some of the writers from Midwest Times came to us. Paul Donovan, who does our theater reviews, and would love this convention. He's really a science fiction nut and math teacher. And on the other side, he does a lot of artistic reviews. So he's been writing for us for 10 years, off and on, as theater and movies. And then Brad Osborne, who does our main news features and covers youth, he's been writing for us all these years. And then we've had to have other people come on board. Monica Soto, who covers music. And through the years, we've had a lot of different people writing for us. And we've always had a great editor that makes all of us look better, because not all of us are professional writers, and she makes us look better by editing everything. So yeah, everything is, we have about 150, I think we published about 155 issues in 10 years. So this year we'll be celebrating our 10-year anniversary this June. So I brought a couple issues. And one thing I want everyone to know, and I know a lot of people here in this room know, letters to the editor are always welcome, of course free. You don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar. Our editor will look at everything you write, so you don't have to labor over it. So we always welcome opinion pieces. We welcome letters to the editor. If there's someone who's passed away, we always will print memoriams for free, but only with the permission of the partner or the family. We would never do it on our own, but that's free. And so, and I write a column that's kind of a calendar of events called Camp Biz, and that's sort of a, you know, it's a calendar of events, but I also try and promote what people are doing, and that's free. So my email address is in the magazine. It's jlong@campkc. Anytime you have an event, just shoot me an email or a press release, whatever you want to do, and we'll publicize it in the next issue. We are a monthly, so sometimes we are coming out in the middle of the month. So I would always say by maybe the 7th of the month, send me information, and we can come out. We're going to be coming out around the 15th of the month every year, every month now. So that's, I think, that's all I have to say.
I have a question. Would you be willing to meet the people who run this place and see if they'd like for next year's convention to be advertised in your
Oh
magazine?
yeah, we love advertising. I just said all this free stuff, but yeah, the advertising is what pays the bill. So we are free. I mean, we don't charge for subscriptions. So yeah, we'd love that.
So before you leave, or everybody could talk more about, maybe I can say a word like entertainment or activism, and they could start talking about that, and I could run you to the owner.
Okay, keywords.
And it's up to you, of course, but I suggested a little wrap up of this happened, last month in Kansas City, unusual.